So hey YouTube, it's Duncan Woodhouse at Bow Wow Media, and today I wanted to answer your questions around the gimbal. Whether it's a smartphone gimbal or whether it's a camera gimbal, at the end of this I want you to be the boss of the gimbal. Impress your friends, your family, even your boss. So let's cut to the intro, which was shot on a gimbal. So we're going to concentrate firstly on what is a gimbal. Okay, and we're going to concentrate on the one that you put your camera on rather than your smartphone. The reason for that is I've got a separate video where I challenged myself to use a smartphone gimbal to try and get good pictures and good sound whilst basically freezing my face off on a ship in Norway. So let's move on to the gimbal for the camera. Digital SLR or digital single lens reflex camera, that doesn't really matter. But we're going to go through what is a gimbal and why is it important? Why would you buy one? What's the difference versus a tripod? And what are the kind of shots you can successfully get with one of these? So firstly, what is the definition of a gimbal? So I'm not sure that definition helps, thanks Wikipedia. A gimbal is basically a handle with some controls on it and a sling or a swing that your camera sits in, and there are a number of motors that keep that camera suspended. So regardless of what you're doing with the gimbal itself, your camera stays nice and smooth. You know, you can turn it, you can pan it, you can move it up and down, and you can basically get nice smooth footage. You know, that's what it's for. You can run, you can gun, you can get nice smooth footage for your wedding videos, for your music videos, for your feature films, for your short films. And that's essentially what a gimbal is. So the next question I tend to get a lot is, what's a gimbal used for? So I've already said, you know, you can use it for music films, you can use it for your short films. But, you know, essentially what's the difference between a gimbal and a tripod? Well, a tripod will do some nice stable shots. It can obviously pan left and right and up and down, but it tends to be fixed. The difference between that and a gimbal is you can take a gimbal, you can unpack it from its box or its bag, and you can obviously take it out and you can do slightly more unconventional shots. You can still do the same as you would with a tripod. It's just handheld, so you can do panning left and right, you can pan up and down, but you can do more unconventional shots. So in the footage you see here, we've got an actor in one of the short films that I've shot. Basically, he's in turmoil. He doesn't know what to do. He's trying to make a decision. So we basically put the camera on a gimbal and we move around him. We made the audience feel confused and conflicted because that's what we wanted them to feel. So we used a gimbal for that because it was much easier to do that than, say, a tripod. Now, even though I've got a tripod with wheels on, it would be very hard to recreate that effect with a tripod and a camera as opposed to the gimbal and the camera. So it will do traditional, it will do unconventional, and it will give you nice, smooth footage throughout. So one of the other questions I get is, which is the best gimbal for my camera? Well, basically, and the honest answer to that is, you need to do your homework and you need to understand what it is you want from a gimbal. Every gimbal is slightly different, and actually the camera that you use with that gimbal and actually the camera and lens combination is really important. So don't necessarily do what I did and rush out and buy the first one you thought looks good. I'm a Canon user. I've always used Canons. That's just kind of what I prefer to do. This particular gimbal actually has more features for Panasonic and Sony users. So it would have made more sense had I checked it out before I bought it, just to see, does it have additional functionality for Canon versus Panasonic versus Sony? So that's kind of a lesson, you know, do your homework, go and have a look, make sure it's the right gimbal for you. You know, cost-wise, these aren't particularly cheap. I mean, this was around about £389, which I think these days is about 507 US dollars. So do your homework, have a look at what features there are on a gimbal and if it's the right gimbal for you. The other thing is, make sure you check what camera it will accept with which lens. So this gimbal will only accept the Canon 5D Mark IV with certain lenses, a small number of lenses. If I added my Canon 5D with a big chunky 85mm lens, this tends to struggle. The motors can't really cope with the weight. Now actually the gimbal advertises that it will take the weight of the camera and that lens, but when it tries to autofocus, the gimbal itself tends to struggle. So actually it would have been worth maybe getting the next one up that can cope with a bit more weight and also the lens and the camera combinations. There's a lot of marketing out there. People tell you that you absolutely need the latest gimbal. If you're starting out, you absolutely don't. But if you've got your feet under the table, as it were, if you've already got your own business, you've already got that equipment, you want to take the next step to smoother footage, which is run and gun handheld for your wedding videos, for your short films, for your feature films, then a gimbal might be your next step. But do your homework. Don't look for any particular brand. There are lots of people telling you there's a particular brand you need. You don't. You just need to do your homework and understand what's the best gimbal for you and your camera and indeed your needs. Thanks YouTube for watching. You are now the boss of the gimbal. Go tell your friends, go and tell your family, go and tell your boss whether they're interested or not. If you've learned something, please hit the like button and please smash the subscribe button. Plenty of videos coming up, not least the next one, which is me setting a challenge in the Norwegian fjords on a ferry, trying to get smooth footage and sound. Crazy, I know. So thank you again for watching and I'll speak to you soon.